Very good morning to you. Welcome to the morning brief. It's down the line 13 days in January 2025. So if you have big plans that you planned from last year, it's already 13 days in. Welcome to the program. I'm Jeffrey Uzama.
It's a beautiful Monday morning here in Lagos. Looks like the Hamilton is not done just yet.
Oh, it just got started, by the way.
Looks like it.
Yeah, it just got started. Actually.
Well, we had a foretaste. It came, left. I think there was some sort of back and forth. But not to worry, we're here to give you some warmth with all of the information that you need. I'm Kayode Okikulu. The weekend, it was a quiet one.
It depends on what you're looking at.
I can tell for sports lovers, it wasn't quite quiet for them. For those who love football, certainly not quiet. Of course, the Armed Forces Remembrance Day, the build-up as well, we've seen across the board, also a big one. There's some others that will unwrap for you, whether or not the national grid collapsed or tripped. That also made the rounds over the weekend, and well, the TCN came to say, well, it wasn't a collapse.
Yeah,
we're sure we're not starting 2025 on that note yet again. So clarified and said it wasn't a collapse; it was some sort of tripping.
Yeah,
and that affected.
There's all kinds of names: tripping, setback. But for Nigerians, as soon as there's no light, it has collapsed. So I understand where they are coming from. But the way Nigerians interpret it is a different kettle of fish. So as long as Nigerians don't have light, and something came from their end, which did not give them light, it's a collapse. It may not necessarily be a technical collapse in that sense.
So
but this is what it is. You know what I say? It will still collapse. Yes, it will.
I know Nigerians right now listen to it and say, Jeffrey, we reject it.
There's no point rejecting what is there. When it gets to the point where it will no longer collapse, we will also tell you what is needed for it not to collapse has not been done. It requires a lot of investment, it requires a lot of work. So this has been building up for many years. So those grids, I don't know how many years they are. So I think it's going to be foolhardy to be thinking it won't happen again. You just also get used to it, just like we got used to malaria and COVID until the right set of investment.
And it's quite interesting what has been happening in this sector, which is something we'll also talk about on the show this morning. The fact that we've not been able to reach our targets. I mean, at this rate, we're still talking about Nigeria generating 4,300 and something megawatts.
We oscillate. I think the max we've ever done is close to 6,000.
Even at that.
And they say we need about 40,000, right? 40,000 minimum.
Well, some would say for us to even have a semblance of some sort of, because I remember having the conversation on the morning brief, and I'll tell you what, let's do 10,000. Let's do 10,000, right? Let's consistently do 10,000, and at least we can scale up from there. But at 10,000, Jeffrey.
I remember, I think it was a former governor, a former minister that was saying when he was governor that every serious government will fix power in six months. Now it's almost 10 years of the APC government, 16 years of the PDP government. They've not been able to fix power.
He will tell you point blank. That's not what I said. Not those words. I didn't say that. My word was taken out of context.
No, what did he say then?
But all the promises made, Jeffrey. I know Nigerians had a list of those promises, and power was one of the soft spots. Yes. It was easy to target power because you knew Nigerians love their power anywhere in the world. So power was actually, so if Nigerians say, you said even 3 days, in some sense, they're right, because that was one of the major promises, made the previous government look terrible for not being able to fix. In fact, that time it was Obasanjo promised it, you know, and he promised and promised and promised till he left. Then Jonathan also promised. So yes, Nigerians deserve.
So at the end of the day, all this idea of, I think Band A is no longer subsidized from what we know, because the president is trying to remove everywhere there's any form of government spending that he can remove. I think Band B downward are subsidized. So if you're saying that all of these big monies people are spending on lights, at the end of the day, they will not, they will have constant power. Don't do it. That's failure. So we better be careful what we promise. Politicians are in the habit of doing all of these things. And when we call it to your own promises, looks like we're mindless critics, but that's our job, to hold you to account. And one other thing that crossed my mind, Kayode, what does the Ministry of Blue Economy, what do they really do? I know what they are supposed to do, at least by the books. And it's one of the ministries I kind of like that this government created. When I heard it, I was like, okay. But I don't know what did. I've been looking at their budget. looking at the agencies under them, what exactly do they do? For the record, I'm going to say one more time. Nothing is going on in that ministry to the best of the knowledge of the public. What's the minister's name again?
That's the former governor.
Yeah,
of
former
Osun
governor of
State.
Osun State.
Yeah.
Oyetola, right?
Yeah.
I've forgotten his first name. So I just don't know. I feel that ministry holds a huge potential. Besides the fight between issues around Coast Guard and Navy, that's the only thing I hear about that ministry. What exactly is going on? We don't hear from the minister. We don't hear anything about the ministry. I've never seen them. I don't know what is going on. So when the president is asking which are the ministers to fire, I'm not saying you should fire him, but these are the things we talk about. Okay? So, Minister Oyetola, what exactly are you doing in your ministry? Ministry of Marine and Blue Economy. I think that's the full name I remember now. I've been looking at your budget. I've been looking at what it is that your ministry really does. What exactly is the roadmap? What's the plan? It holds a lot of potential because we see other clients, how the blue economy works. But here, it feels docile. It feels like nothing is happening. So, Minister Oyetola, maybe it's time for you to come out and explain to Nigerians that in the last month since you've been appointed as minister, what exactly you've done. So at least we can interrogate and know, okay, he's done this, we didn't know. But as from where we sit, you're doing nothing. I'm sorry.
Important point you made, Jeffrey. On the face of it, the ministry, new ministry, as you know, is meant to promote sustainable maritime and aquatic prosperity in Nigeria. I know we talked about that last week, and it was a question we raised. Naturally, we do that from time to time. I mean, away from the conversation around the coming election in Osun State, Jeffrey, because it's...
I'm not even, that is not even in my head.
But it's a major part of it.
Yeah.
You have to understand, it's also a major part of it because it's been said that this is also a build-up to that election, and you understand how these things work. So is that what is responsible for this? I mean, we don't want to hear that. I have seen him speak on a few occasions at events, but apart from that, that's just it.
If I ask you now, what has that ministry done? I don't think you can say.
I just answered you, Jeff. Just answered.
What exactly is going on?
So these are the things we need to properly put out there. But hey, I'm sure the ministry is listening. We will stay on the ministry and other ministries to ensure that you get the dividends.
And we're going to take in the
democracy.
ministry. You know what I talked about again, Kado, before we go to the headlines? The fact that I think we need to appeal to the CSOs, because when I look at the budgets of all these MDAs and all these ministries and all these places, I think we should not just have proliferation of CSOs. We should have CSOs dedicated to each ministry. Because if you look at this 2025 budget and even other budget, you're going to be embarrassed at some of the submissions. As some of these, actually, somebody wrote that down as a project, as a line item. Some don't have clarity. So it's just sometimes some of these things are just a mess.
Welcome to the budgetary process.
Come on, man.
And I know budget has been raising lots of eyebrows, not one, not two. And hey, these are some of the issues that we're taking on as well. But we're starting off, Jeffrey, with energy on the show this morning. We'll be taking a look at how Nigeria can transition towards cleaner, more sustainable energy, and how this can, of course, be a catalyst for economic growth, job creation, and sustainable development. So all of the talk about it tripping and whatever, the point is, how do we ensure that the energy keeps flowing to sustain our economy and ensure that we get the very best from our human capital? But that's not all on the show this morning, Jeff.
Apparently, beyond the energy issues and the transition, we will talk about leadership. We're joined by the gentleman you're seeing on your screen, Femi Fashero. He's the KICC National Superintendent. He's a leader and a pastor. We're talking to us about leadership. It's critical. I said critical like 4 times. It's important we get leadership right. They say we have abundance of natural and human resources, but we've not been able to produce the right leadership. So what exactly is the missing link here? If that is it, maybe you'll give us a leeway at what the current administration can do differently.
There you have it. And that's not all on the show this morning. We'll be taking a look at a certain part of the book as well, which he has written. So it's something that you want to be a part of. It's a segment that we're introducing on the show. There you have it. But We'll also talk about women in business. Yes, on this week's edition of Women in Business, we're joined by a multi-talented entrepreneur who's paving the way in a number of industries. For those who are familiar with that space, this face, of course, rings a lot of bells.
Yeah, she's going to be talking to us in a moment. She's in the Real Housewives of Lagos right now. I think she's one of the new entrants into that reality show, but she's a businesswoman. Dabota will be joining us on the show. Again, we'll be bringing you one-on-one with Real Nino, of Afro drill artist. We'll be here to talk about music career and what inspires him to do the kind of music he's done. So this Afro thing has gotten variations and variants. I like it. Everybody, there's Afro rap, there's Afro fusion, there's all sort of Afro. The most important thing, there's Afro in between all of the mix. And Nigerians are the vanguard of everything that has to do with Afro. So yeah, we'll talk to one of the people doing their bit within that space, guys.
So there you have it, right here on the Morning Brief. We're giving you all of the Afro feel. You can be a part of the show, #CTV Morning Brief, or on WhatsApp. WhatsApp is also a point which you can reach out. Gotten lots of questions, messages, and people trying to seek clarification as well. And I think it's great that people are interested in issues of governance, both young and old. So
I'm happy about that.
Yeah, you'll see the WhatsApp number on your screen any moment from now, and then you can of course use that to be a part of the show. So that's our hand of fellowship. The WhatsApp number is right there. No calls. Bukola is not here, so she's not going to pick your calls, right?
All right, so maybe we'll go straight to the papers now to find out exactly what the papers is saying. So for about 1 week now, we introduced the dailies, just to bring you up to speed as to what the dailies are saying. And let's begin with the Blue print newspaper. The top headline says, air ground assault devastates Toriji stronghold, kills scores, camps dismantled in Zamfara. Lawal APC Lords troops commiserate to civilian casualties. Kebbi immigration border facilitates attack. 3 contractors, 1 other killed. So it's sad to see. Our military, they are doing a lot. They are doing their bit to get this element out of our spaces, but we're also having collateral damage. This is the second in barely 2 weeks or 3 weeks. I do not know what's going on with the precision of assault. The other one was, they say it was secondary explosion when they launched an assault against Lakrawa in Sokoto. They launched assault against Lakrawa in Sokoto. So secondary explosion that hit the cache actually affected the casualty, although we have more questions as to, because there were air intelligence and also technical intelligence and human intelligence. So as we asked how they could not pick that cache and the impact it will make, and this has happened yet again, where civilians have also been killed accidentally. So what we're querying is the idea. We know war can be messy, but the idea is to protect lives of citizens. So if citizens are dying, it's not a good thing. So I think the authorities should be able to speak out as to what this is. But we must thank the military for doing their job, but it can be better than allowing people to be killed time and again when these things happen. I think it's not good.
It's always a very, very tricky situation, but it's always good to see the military owning up and saying, well, this was our intention, this happened, we're sorry, we'll do better next time. And I think it's a better next time that I would love to see, but that's not to take away the support that the military deserves and needs at this point from the people. Absolutely. But clearly we don't like to have all of these reports happening. But it raises another conversation, Jeffrey, which has been said time and again, how some of these terrorist bandits use communities as cover.
A shield, yeah.
Yeah, just use human shields. And it's just one of those cases. Let's move on now to the next daily, and this particular one has gotten a lot of people talking. It's on the front page of the Guardian newspaper. It concerns our economy. Yeah, so this is what you find right there on the front page of the Guardian newspaper. Road to $1 trillion economy. It's very interesting how the Guardian puts it. Nigeria toes EU path, integrates $146 billion shadow economy in GDP plan. In case you're wondering, what is this about? What is the shadow economy? So there's a breakdown, a pictorial breakdown for you, just in case. So you have the the economy that we all see, that we know, and then there's a shadow economy or transactions, and I'm talking underground transactions like the informal sector. Yes, there's black market, there's illegal transactions, again, there's smuggling, human trafficking, gambling, prostitution, and some have said, well, this is going to give us a wrong GDP estimation.
This is actually my concern. I'm making this more of a moral argument than a technical argument. So the argument from the experts is that a transaction is transaction, whether it's legal or illegal. So if there's a flow of some form of an exchange, because they are trying to rebase. This is the background of this. Nigeria is trying to rebase her GDP and rebase the CPI, where you get inflation numbers. So basically, capturing what has not been captured, some of the elements that have not been captured. So those are some of the things they are looking at. So basing it, and I think it's going to be based on the most stable economy we had in the last maybe 2019, because 2020 we had COVID, recovery was in 2021, and we have a lot of stimulation. So real economic activity to measure has to be 2019 in that sense. So they are now saying that there are certain sectors that were really not as robust as to the last rebasing that we need to now aggregate. Now, this is my fear. Two concerns I have here. First, there's a moral argument. Why are you adding illegal transactions like human trafficking and all of those things? Although technically they are transactions because money is moving. But when you do that and aggregate it, because we'll do an average and the economy grows, it's going to be a false narrative in that sense, but it's also a technical addition. So we're going to make that argument, moral argument against it. The second part is the fact that there's something I worry about. Remember when we adopted ILO model of unemployment, and now our unemployment number is about 5 point something or 4 point something percent. So if I'm a policymaker and you come to me as a Nigerian president and say your unemployment is 4.3, what am I going to do with that number? It doesn't impose a sense of urgency. So this rebasing now with the GDP can make our GDP grow, not because we are that productive, just because we just aggregated a few things, optimized, and things look like they are better, not because the government did anything fantastic. Also, the issue of CPI is going to be that simple.
You know what they say about data, Jeff?
Yes.
Data can be, I mean, you can use data for whatever you want to use it for. I think what this can do, two things it can either do: encourage some of these activities. So people say, oh wow, this is lucrative, maybe this is next business I should go into, sadly. So that's what this might do. But if it's handled well, it also helps you to see how you're losing money. And then you're able to wake up, because sometimes you don't understand these things until the data looks you in the face and you see this amount goes into kidnapping, this amount goes into all those other transactions, and you realize that we're losing money. Then it's a no-brainer. You begin to work towards ensuring that the money is not lost to those nefarious activities. So two ways it can go, but data, Jeffrey just recently said that Amajiri would not be considered out of school children anymore. And for some people, they'll tell you even the way you calculate poverty is subjective. I tell you, for me, having just 100 naira in my account or 1,000 naira is not poverty. It's just the way I choose to live my life. So I'm not poor. You call me poor, but I'm not poor. So that's the thing about data. It's very tricky.
So I agree with rebasing, but the element of rebasing and now using it as progress is my problem. We're going to be here and check all of it step by step.
No, I think it's a properly put it in context.
Yes.
We're not going to lump it together and say, our economy is doing this. No,
and
this
again,
is shadow.
Just like that,
this is not.
We were doing 40 hours. As a Nigerian economy, now we're doing 1 hour. When our legacy issues have not been sorted, if I walk 1 hour in the US, my light is sorted, my road is sorted, my internet is sorted, my water is sorted, my security is sorted to an extent. So if I put in 1 hour, all of these things I'm not spending on, but the Nigerian has to provide everything I've mentioned, and you put him in the same box with the man who is working 1 hour. You want to give a policymaker that, I said, Gov president is 4.3, the economy, no. It doesn't make sense. We must do things that reflect our own kind of economy to the best of our ability, even though we're in a global community. Kai, do you have the next one?
Yeah, it's good to see that not all countries are adopting that ILO methodology, right? So different strokes for different folks. But that's pretty much the big story on the Guardian newspaper. You see another picture, which some have said speaks volumes on the front page of the Guardian, and it shows President Bola Tinubu receiving billionaire businessman Femi Otedolala's chairman of First Holdco PLC during his courtesy visit to the president in Abu Dhabi. Oh yes, I just guess you didn't know the president is in Abu Dhabi as we speak. But that picture right there at the bottom of the front page, Jeffrey, speaks volumes.
Well, no comment. Let's move to the next one. Which one is next paper now?
A couple of papers. This Nigeria, is also on the lineup of our dailies this morning, Jeffrey. And you see, it's about looted funds. Nigerians deserve full disclosure.
Lawyers, CSOs want government to render accounts of status of Abacha, other recovered funds. Outrage over Desani's loot as U.S. directs on how $52.88 million should be utilized. So it's quite interesting how...
Is it interesting, Jeffrey? I'm not sure I'll use the word interesting.
And that's very diplomatic.
It is appalling. So it's quite simple, Jeffrey. Yes. Money is taken from you, right? Someone steals money from you.
Yeah.
It ends up in another person's, saves it in someone's house.
Another system,
right? And then you fight for that money. And eventually when it's time to get your money back, the person who's been keeping your money
and has generated interest on your money,
done business, Jeffrey, made a lot of money, now says, I'm going to give you this money. I'm going to help you, right? I'll give you this money, but you know what? You can't just use this money. This is what you use it for. I will tell you what to use your money for.
Yes, I understand. As far as the issue of sovereignty is concerned, it's an insult to tell us how we want to use our money. But perhaps they are doing the Lord's work on behalf of Nigeria, also infringing on our
So Nigerians don't have access to the Lord in that sense.
So there are two ways to it. I totally agree with you that it's our money. Give us our money. We can choose to spend our money the way we want. I think that's a natural thing to do. Yes. But because public officials are constantly stealing these monies,
and you have facilitated that stealing,
and you have facilitated that stealing, because sometimes when these guys are screaming at us, your country is corrupt, where did these politicians send these monies to? Some of these corrupt politicians send these monies to your country. And now we're trying to get our money back. You're telling us how to spend. So there's a big argument. On one hand, people are saying, why would you tell us how to spend our money? On the other hand, people are saying, yes, it's important because some of these people have a culture. That money will enter voicemail. If you don't know what voicemail is, it's a Nigerian context for the money will just be re-looted. We have a situation where our monies that were looted are recovered and then they are re-looted. So by those who are politically exposed. So those are the issues. So it's a valid argument depending on where you look at it. So I totally agree. Sorry, I agree with your frustration.
It's not mine. I just want people have
yes, I totally agree, because every time I want to see what we do with the what is it government spend now. It's some of these agencies that force us to put these things together because we never really account for the resources that are given to us. So for instance, if they say 200 and how much is it again? $52.8 million.
Oh, the one that was got recently
we want to invest it in this grips that needs oxygen every other day, that collapses. We want to invest it in Lagos Coastal, whatever it is we want to invest it in. It's going to be clear. But anyway,
it was $52 million, the one that just got. But hey, what do you think about it? This particular repatriated funds from former minister. Let us know, is this the right way to go? Should we decide how we want to spend that money taken from us in the first place? Don't forget, WhatsApp is the line with which you can reach us. Quite a number of issues. Naturally, these stories will get you animated. And that is what is expected. But we'll take a moment now. These are some of the talking points, actually, that will also have energy. What is energy like where you are? And I think that's where we're getting started this morning.
So we'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll get started with our conversation. Just join us again. Welcome back. Let's talk about energy sector. And it's never an ending. It's not going to end anytime soon because Nigeria has not been able to cross certain power generating barriers. For instance, I don't think we've done I think max is between 6 or so or 7. I don't know I can't remember the exact number, but we oscillate around 3 and 5 megawatts for the entire country of 200 million plus persons. And by every standard, it's bad. So how do we generate more power? But beyond that, what do we do about other sources of energy? We need a mix of everything to be able to. Are we over-depending on just this one source, or we should be looking in other direction to optimize, aggregate, and help the system? Which is why we brought in the expert to help us out on this issue. Joined on the program by Professor Emeritus, Energy Studies, Louisiana State University, Executive Director Emmanuel Egboga Foundation in Abuja. He joins us via Zoom, Mr. Wumi Ledare. We also have Anieka Udon, Business Development Director of Cypher Crescent. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming on the program.
Good morning.
Prof, Happy New Year, and Mr. Anieka, Happy New Year to you. But Prof, let's start with you. Let's start with the immediate concern. So maybe help us break down as to what these terminologies mean, because as I was talking to with my colleague Karede, when we hear that the grid or there's no power and they say something happened to the grid, the average layman says is a collapse. But the people in charge say not everything is a collapse. Maybe help educate us on that. And I also like you to speak on this 12 times last year collapse, and then definitely I can almost say to collapse again.
Thank you again, and good morning, channel and the viewer. Let's start with the basics. There are three components of power segment: generation, transmission, distribution. So it is important to understand the link between the generating plants and the end users. So the movement along the trunk line, if I can use the word, which is the transmission line, when there's a limited capacity as to how much inflow it can receive, and because everything is centralized, you will have a problem when you inject a lot of load on that line and a lot of demand. So what you have is not necessarily a collapse, but a trip. Every time the line is overloaded, there's an instrument there that we literally just shut it down. It's just like your house. When you have too much load in the distribution line, the same thing will happen. It's not that the lines are falling in terms of using the word collapse. It's just that there's too much overload and the system will just trip. And to me, that's a layman way of looking at what happened. Instead of using the word collapse, collapse, collapse. It's a tripping system when the line is overloaded. Now, then when you come to then the idea, so we must understand that that link is very important, which is what we call the logistic component. Is wanting to generate 10 to 15 gigawatt electricity. It's another thing to be able to evacuate it to the end user. So where you have the problem is that link. And now when you talk about grids, and that's why you see people now are suggesting, and I think Nigeria is moving towards that, whereby we decentralize. And decentralization simply means that you do not necessarily need to upload to your transmission line to move it across a distance. But you can have different grid systems. They may be connected, but it's only the surplus in wherever it is generated that we move to the central line. And that way, again, we decouple the distribution system and transmission system so that overloading will be significantly reduced. And that's where I think we are moving forward to. See, decentralization is the key to resolving the collapse or the tripping of the electric distribution and transmission line. And we must not be afraid to decentralize. And I'm glad we are moving, even though it is late, but better late than never. Let me stop at this.
Prof, let me take it to Mr. Anieka. Mr. Anieka, I also need your own intervention as to the issue of the grid. I want you to speak to two things. First, Prof had agreed that, because I remember when the president was campaigning, when he went to Chatham House, one of the things he spoke about was power. He said the model is a broken model and it will be fixed. Those are the promises he made. So perhaps this fixing is decentralization. So how far-reaching do you think decentralization can go? And it appears, correct me if I'm wrong, the decentralization looks at what we're already used to, the model we're used to in terms of hydro and thermal. But we're here to also talk about other sources of energy. I want you to talk about all of this in the mix. Mr. Nekan.
All right. Thank you very much. I would like to start with how far-reaching could that be? Of course, it is a mix of technical infrastructure and policy. So I think it's gladdening to know that the Power Act, the Nigerian Electricity Act 2023, has already laid the frameworks for the decentralization where state governments, private sectors, have been empowered, to be able to generate power and distribute powers to end users, like Prof rightly stated. Of course, if we have only one grid, a national grid, taking care of the power needs of Nigerians, of course, you are also centralizing the risk. Means that when there's any turbulence in the system, it could affect the nation. But if you decentralize, you have also distributed the risk, so that if you have any part of the component that fits, you may have, you don't need to have an entire nation or a bigger part of the nation in darkness. So how far can we go? Because currently the source of electricity is about 85% from fossil energy, which is majorly gas, and we have the rest 15% hydro. So we could say that's something thrilling, because we are not having 100% from the fossil fuel. Of course, Nigeria is quite blessed. We can talk. We have a lot of hydro resources. Our hydropower, we've not tapped it completely. It is a record that we have about the capacity of about 14,000 megawatts, but we are only tapping the hydro to about 2,000 megawatts. And of course, Nigeria is highly blessed in terms of the solar and hydro, in terms of the solar and wind power sources. Our solar energy potential stands at about maybe between 4.9 to about 7 kilowatts meter square per day. So we're not tapping that. That's enough sunlight to set up some very large solar power fields. And we also are very much blessed in terms of the wind resources from the northern part of the country, from the Sahel, and even the coastal region of Nigeria. We have considerably nice wind speed, about 2.5 to about 5 meters per second, and that's enough to set up some wind turbines. So, of course, there is an issue of infrastructure. How do you take it from the potentials to increase the mix? It is a gradual process. Of course, we need to generate the resources. We need to also rely on international, maybe climate change financing to ensure that we gradually do that. And our national determined contribution to emissions shows that we are ensuring, or we can make it a move that by 2030 we should be having a mix of about 30% from the renewables contributing to our national electricity basket.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, Prof, let me come back to you. We're going to piggyback on some of the things that Mr. Nekan has mentioned, but I want you to speak broadly. I remember there was a gentleman who had contested to be president, I think in 2019. He made a very fundamental statement. He said if he were to be president, he would have broken Nigeria, instead of the term geopolitical, into geo-economic zones. So let's look at power from the geo-economic sense. We have the sun in the north, and there are places that have water. If you were to consult for the regions of the country across board for productivity and efficiency and sustainability as far as this new direction is concerned, what would you be telling them, giving natural endowments, so that everybody is not running to the same space and we end up in the same challenge that we are trying to run away from? Prof, that's for you. Prof, if you can unmute so we can hear what you're saying.
Okay. I say, thank you for question. I think we do make a mistake in the interpretation of this decentralization. I'm a little bit weary. I would have preferred, even though it's not in our constitution, I would have preferred a regionalization instead of a state approach for this our decentralization. And I just hope that the state will not end up creating another sort of state NEPA. I think I've said that before. So I will have followed that presidential hopeful's planning. I would have loved a power region, the northwest, the northeast, the north central, the southeast, the southwest, and the south-south. And I won't even follow the political structure. You can create an energy district that does not necessarily follow a political structure. And I'm still hoping that the states can come together and find a way to plan in a regional sense for economic sustainability and development. So for example, where you have hydropower in abundance, you can create an electric power zonal region where they concentrate on developing the solar power. That does not mean the south-south with a lot of gas resources cannot also put electrons into a national grid that even people with hydropower could benefit from. That's what I can hope the governors can begin to think, not in a territorial sense, but in an aggregate sense that can benefit the entire nation. That would have been my approach. And that's what you see happen in the United States, where you have federal regional power sector working with the state authority to be able to make sure that adequate power is generated, distributed within the state, and the surpluses are put on the national grid or central grid. I won't call it national, I'll call it central. Secondly, I think we need to understand that the concept of energy transition is not bad. And that's why I tend to call it evolving energy landscape that is inclusive of all the primary energy sources. And we need to think as a nation to anchor this evolution properly. And I think I will have time to talk about it more. But for now, I want you to understand what my panelist friend says. 3 important instruments are key as we move along. 1 is technology, 2 is economics, and 3 is public policy. And those are the 3 anchors that we need to develop to be able to make sure that whatever we do is sustainable. Because there are 3 dimensions or 4 that we must pay attention to in this evolution. 1 is energy security. 2 is energy equity. 3 is energy sustainability. And the drivers are affordability, accessibility, sustainability, and adaptability. There must be access, it must be available, it must be affordable, and it must be adaptable. So we can't do it in a hurry. But let's make sure we advise the states to come together and put the resources together to be able to make the best use of the primary energy source in each of the region. I won't base it on political association. I will base it on economic association and needs that are similar to make affordable in that particular region easier. And the pricing must not be the same, because the economic viability of each of the region in Nigeria is not homogeneous.
Prof, does that
heterogeneous.
Prof, does that imply that you support the banding, the band A, band B, or are you proposing another model entirely?
No. You do not measure anything you sell you can't price anything without being able to measure the quantity. You cannot promise me a band A, but I can't measure the number of hours that you give me light. So what I would have expected is to do the pricing based on your consumption. There is going to be a base, like what we call progressive pricing. Who says that the child of my driver does not need 20 hours light? And my own child, because I'm a professor, need 20 hours light. It is inequitable. I think it's very faulty. There's no economic basis for band A, band B that is based on what you cannot measure. But there could be a progressive pricing. Let's say the first 1,000 command the particular rate. The next above that 1,000 command additional rate, and the next and the next. Right now, the band A pricing is cross-subsidization. I went to a place in which there were so many air conditioners there like mine, but the rate is almost 1/5 of what I pay. It is inequitable. We can talk about that another time. If you are going to promise me 24 hours, there must be a way to measure that you actually deliver that 24 hours. And when you don't deliver it, you can charge me. That means our meter system must be able to capture the number of hours,
Right.
multiply by the supply, but I would have preferred a progressive billing system, whereby if I go to the next level, I pay a higher rate.
And I think we're back to the heart of this conversation. And it's interesting how you put it, Prof. So let me go to Mr. Nieko, because Prof says it must be affordable, accessible. But there's always been that debate or the argument that, well, electricity generation, like any other form of business, is expensive. It costs money. And that's why you had the operators saying we need to charge cost-reflective tariffs. Right. So in terms of having someone to pay for it eventually, but someone has to pay, whether it's hydro, gas, or renewable, what have you, someone has to pay. At this point, Bande will say they're paying over 200 naira per kilowatt hour. And Prof says, well, that is faulty from the sense of it. But in terms of getting people to pay, and we need it to be accessible and affordable, how are we able to go around that? Because I know you also have, you're well versed in the financial aspect of things. Have you been able to sit down and say, well, this is a solution to this funding or costing challenge?
Yeah, I think right now, for a long time in Nigeria, I think power has been viewed as a social commodity, which to some extent is also right, because power is at the bedrock of economic evolution in Nigeria. And there is also the perception about government. There's a good percentage of Nigerians who feel government hasn't done enough over the past years. And of course, there's a conflict between what people really need and what people can pay and what people want to pay. For an investor, we have privatized. There's a lot of privatization activities going on in the power sector. And if we must continue to see it as probably between a commercial commodity and maybe a social commodity, there still need to be some intervention at a certain level. Again, there's conscientization, and there is a limit to a conscientization you can do. Government needs to convince the people, but interestingly, it is the private sector that has to suffer, because the private sector here invests the money. But the people over time, power has been in the hands of government, so people feel the government has not really utilized the resources that was to be for power development. We shouldn't have been where we are. Of course, our economy is developing or still having some issues growing, because our power sector is not growing as well. But we wish to really commend some of the public steps that have been taken. So we need to conscientize people, and we also, as a people, as a people, as government, needs to know that for us to accelerate the development, we need to find a way to make power accessible and affordable. And this is not done in isolation. If you fix the economy, people begin to have more access to expendable funds, and people will begin to have ideas on ways to invest their energy and their ideas and their resources. And it becomes inevitable because for people to pay for power. Because if you set up an enterprise, you don't want to run at a loss. You want to be profitable. So you see Nigerians having a mix of power from the electricity sources, and at the same time was still very, very largely dependent on generators, where people buy petrol and diesel at very high prices, and they are complaining, but they still do it. An average barber, an average hairdresser on the street owns his generator, to run his business. It does it. So it shows that if you have availability, people will be ready to pay. But again, the prices have to be reflective of the economic power of the people, and progressively we can move from there.
Pardon me, let me rephrase, and I catch the drift, but I want to borrow from what we saw play out with petrol subsidy, for example. So the argument was, well, we've been subsidizing the rich as well at the expense of the poor. So what government did was removed subsidy entirely, right, for rich and poor. So nobody was enjoying subsidy in that sense, even though government said it tried to, provide some sort of succor to the vulnerable and all of that. But the point is, subsidy was removed for everyone. But for power, what government tried to do in a sense was remove subsidy for poor, which is why it banned it in that sense for areas. But Prof has said, well, that is faulty, because what you have now is people staying in that, in quote, poor area, but they are consuming, they have air conditioners, they have very heavy equipment, so they're consuming. And my question is, I don't know if you agree with Prof on whether or not banding is faulty, but how do we attract the right cost? For the petroleum industry, subsidy was removed, and then they said, well, we try to divert the money to other things in governance. But basically, the government was trying to get the real cost of petrol from those consuming it. So how do we ensure that we get that real cost for power as well, or at least get people to pay for what is being consumed? Because the discourse will tell you that, judging from NERC's analysis, that a lot of people didn't pay for power. I think about 300 billion plus in 9 months last year. So they will tell you, we're not getting the money we want. So that's the question I'm asking, Mr. Nyeko.
Okay, yeah. As for that, you can't really say, to some extent, correct, people are not paying. There's still a lot of reports about energy theft here and there. But there could also be some leakages as a result of faulty infrastructure. By the time you transmit from one, you generate, and you transmit from one point A to point B, how are you sure that what you transmitted from point A actually got to point B? And how are you sure that the losses you are incurring are as a result of theft and not sometimes as a result of a faulty infrastructure? There could be some leakages. It could be that your infrastructure are not good enough to transmit efficiently. You could have losses in the process. So I think determining the cost is a prerogative of the investors, of the companies, and I don't think it's a big problem for them. They are the owners of the resources, they are the investors, they are the people, they are the entrepreneurs who manage the production. So they know quite well how much they sunk into production. But they are also faced sometimes by the challenges of the economy, cost of production. How are they able to get stuff like raw materials like gas? Another one is security. I'm sure this is all built into the cost of production. Securing the infrastructure to ensure that you don't have vandalism and the end of it. All these are built into cost of production. So these are, in quotes, some kind of an artificial cost injected into the core technical cost. The core technical cost is not 100% of what a company would look at. So maybe you go to a client where you have maybe less security issues, probably less cheaper logistics to bring in your facilities, your maintenance, equipment, and all that stuff for spare parts. So all that could reflect in the cost. So it needs to be holistic. You can't really fix one part of the economy when other parts are not taken care of.
Prof, let's take it back to you. Maybe you can speak to some of the things Mr. Nekan has raised, but in addition to that, I also like you to speak broadly, as quickly as possible, to the issue of this transition, energy transition and renewable energy broadly, on the best model for the best result. In addition to that, you can also talk about, because he's mentioned the issue of enumeration in passing. We could go to some of the small details as to whatever the source of energy is, but there is a backbone problem that we may be having. But I would like you to speak to this at least first and foremost.
Well, thank you, and my friend from Cyber Crescent. Again, I mentioned, and I'm going to talk about the rate and how to get the actual value from your business. But again, it's about technology. It's about economics and public policy. The governance is key. Let us understand the electricity market very well. It is a monopoly because there's no competition within the place, the region where electricity is being sold as of this time. In my own hometown, there's only one distributor that covers up to Abuja. That is too big. Second, you cannot charge someone without delivering the capacity that you promise. This is where the state regulators that are coming on will be very useful. Anywhere in the world where you have a monopoly, the seller cannot single-handedly determine the price. This is where the institution of government must play a critical role. And they must cover their eyes to what I call institutional capture, where the seller can always get his way because the institution is protecting them. So you must come to the regulator, which for now is not. Let them see your investment. Let them know your desired earnings in your investment, and that will be the basis for determining what the tariff is. All this jumbo jungle in which they will say band A, band B, band C, band D is introducing what I call cross-subsidization. Forgive me to give you a practical example. When my father was alive, with just few bulbs in the house, he was paying 2,000 naira. And all of a sudden, whether there's somebody in the house or not in the house, they charge him 4,000 to 5,000, whether the light is on or not. I've never seen an investor who does not want to measure what he is selling, except in Nigeria. Estimated billing must be corrected quickly. So we must think about technology, we must think about economics, we must think about public policy. The three of them must work together, just like what we call the triple helix plus. There is no isolation. And technology is supposed to drive down the cost of production, thereby making the price affordable of what you are selling. Now, energy transition is the moving away from fossil fuel so as to be able to meet the requirement for climate change expectation. There's nothing wrong with that. The only thing that is wrong is when we want to predict the same approach from one region of the world to the other region. This is where I depart from the global approach, because if you look at those that are preaching energy transition, that I use the word, they have energy security. Listen, 2 million barrels per day of oil or 6 billion cubic feet per day is not enough for Nigeria. So if Nigeria will stop exporting crude oil today, and Ghana will stop exporting crude oil, and Gabon and Angola, some of these countries will be in jeopardy. You saw what happened with Ukraine and Europe. So climate change then becomes, in my opinion, a platform to defund petroleum. And that will put the energy petroleum producing company into something. So quickly, energy transition is a misnomer. It's energy evolution. And energy does not transist just like that. It takes about 60 years for one dominant fuel to disappear. So Nigeria must be very careful. and not allow grants and aid to let them abandon what they have. But the basket must be expanded. Hydro, wind, nuclear, and solar. They are legitimate sources of primary energy, and Nigeria must have a council to manage that.
It's very important, Prof. As we're doing with the GDP and CPI rebasing of economic audits, maybe we'll add to your term now, energy evolution, in terms of energy audit as well, so that we use the right terms for the right things. Professor Emeritus Energy Studies, Louisiana State University, Executive Director, Emmanuel Egboga Foundation, Abuja, Mr. Professor Wumi Iledare, joining us from Abuja studios. And Kanodon is a Business Development Director at Cypher Crescent. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Prof, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you very much.
Enjoy your day.
All right, so we will take a quick break. When we come back, we want to talk about leadership broadly. You know, the term leadership is a very familiar term, but what does it really mean? How come we're always told that Nigeria has in its abundance of natural and human resources, but almost 60 to 70 years, going on 70 years, we still can't fix the issue of leadership? We'll find out why right here on the program. Join us again.
Let's get into that all-important conversation, leadership, whether you're talking economy, power, right? Whatever it is you're talking about falls on leadership, really, the quality of leadership. And this morning, we have someone special joining us on the program right here in our Lagos studio. He's the National Superintendent of Kingsway International Christian Center. He's a resident pastor of KICC, Maryland, Pastor Femi Fashiru. Good morning, Pastor Fashiru. Welcome to the Morning Brief.
Good morning. Thank you so much.
I know you, they say judges should try and stay away from what's happening in the politics so it doesn't influence, but you as a pastor, you get right into it. So you feel what is going on in the country, in the world, as much as any other Nigerian. I mean, we just talked about the power situation. It's something you're familiar with as well.
Absolutely.
So everything rises and falls on leadership, they say, whether it's the economy, whatever it is, leadership, even in religion as well. It also rises and falls on leadership. So I want us to speak particularly now to this Nigerian situation. Our challenge, is it a leadership or a leader challenge? Is it a system challenge? Are we trying to use a system that doesn't quite work for us? There'll be that issue. Is it a people challenge? Is it the people or is it a spiritual problem we're dealing with? When you look at the leadership situation in Nigeria, what is your diagnosis?
I think the problem in Nigeria, you cannot basically say it's one thing alone. I think it's a combination of a lot of things, considering the fact that we are such a big society. We have diversity in terms of people. We have diversity in terms of people's interest. We have diversity in terms of what the vision should be for now. Even the political terrain. Also, you have different political parties with different manifestos and what have you. So we have a combination of a lot of things that has put Nigeria where Nigeria is today. So I would say yes, we have a leadership problem, we have leaders problem, we definitely have followership problem. We also have management problem. We cannot leave out the lack of clear vision. And when I talk about vision, I'm not talking about a 4-year vision. If you ask anybody now and say, where do you think our leaders want to take Nigeria to in 20 years? I'm not sure a lot of people will be able to articulate that. Because leaders in government, they promise while campaigning, they promise to get everything done in 4 years. which is absolutely impossible. So when you have a 4-year vision for a country like ours, with the amount of setbacks that we have experienced over the decades, then we are basically not serious with what we want to do. So there should be a 20-year plan, there should be a 25-year plan, there should be a 50-year plan for a country like ours. So all of those things put together becomes the challenge that we have today. I did say that we have leaders problem, in the sense that do we really have leaders? You know, to start with, for you to be a leader, you must have followers. For people to follow you, Bible says that write the vision, make it plain, so that you will read it, you know, will run with it. You know, what's the vision that the leaders have put before us that we are to follow in this country? I don't think it's clear enough. So do we have leaders, or we actually have managers? Our leaders, are they just trying to manage the economy? Are they just trying to manage the health service system? Are they just trying to manage the system itself? So the question is, do we really have leaders? Should we start to aspire to have leaders? Stop calling managers leaders.
So do we really have leaders?
I think we have shortfalls in that. I believe we have shortfalls in that. Like I said, you know, if anybody can tell me where our leaders of today wants to put Nigeria in 20 years, I don't think that is well articulated.
But Pastor Fasher, I want you to do two things. Maybe we look at where we're coming from. What was the vision of the founding fathers? Perhaps those were the ones that will be able to tell us, when they went against the colonial masters, they had something on their mind.
Absolutely.
Whether we're on track or not, you help us say that, tell us that. Again, who is a leader? Because even armed robbers have followers. So who exactly is a leader? So maybe you can tie the both for me.
So a leader is someone who has a vision. So basically you could say that you have a positive leader with a positive vision. You know, so a leader is someone who has a vision, who is able to communicate the vision clearly enough for some people to buy into it and want to give themselves and their talents and their skills and their time to help the leader achieve those visions. That is an effective leader. We've had leaders in Nigeria, the likes of Obafemi Awolowo. Obviously, you can see their vision. I think the tallest building in Africa, as at the time that they were around, was built with this men. It was something that was not around in this space. Cocoa House in Ibadan was envisioned by this set of people, and we still see it today. Unfortunately, after Cocoa House in Ibadan, in that space, have you ever seen anything like that? No, it has not matched up to that. So basically, a leader has a vision, not based on what is around, but where you want to take the people to. When we speak in Bible terms, there was a vision for God to take a people away from suffering, away from slavery, to a place that they will call their own, a place that God has assigned for them and God wants for them. So he assigned a leader who will pick the people. It didn't matter whether they went through the season of wilderness, but they knew clearly where they were going. Even though some of the people were rebelling, they wanted to go back, they didn't know whether they would go forward, but they knew where they were going. So the question right now is, where is our health system going in the next 10 years? What we have right now is just government buildings, hospitals. What's the vision for the health system in Nigeria for the next 10 years, 20 years, 25 years? Educational system. All I see them doing right now is managing what was done by our founding fathers, what was put down by our founding fathers. those were vision of how many years ago? So many decades ago. The vision ought to be sharpened, it ought to be rewritten. We need to know where we are going as a nation. I think that is a key problem.
Do you think that democracy impedes the kind of progress we want to make? Or democracy should aid? I'm saying that with two things on my mind. I'm looking at Malaysia, I'm looking at Singapore, I'm looking at New Zealand, I'm looking at the United States. All of this country, they have how we can draw comparative analytics. Because some of these countries, they had leaders that were there. Even in the Arab country, we have leaders, let's say UAE, for instance, run by a monarchy. We have leaders that have been there for many years. They've seen their vision through. And then we have this 4-term, maximum term leadership that has been cut. But if we make the argument, there's also the United States. So I want you to do that comparison for us as to what works for us the most. But what we have is democracy anyway.
This tends to be controversial because I'm just someone who had looked at our, I've looked at our own people. Democracy is imported, as we all know it. Our system runs best with a type and shadow of a monarchical system where you have one person who is in charge of a domain, in charge of a territory. So the people in there are his people. They are his sons and daughters. So talking about the others, where this system can be effective. So they know the plight of the people. They live among the people. They take responsibility for the people. The people serve them directly, so they can take account of the state of the people. And whether we like it or not, even though we're practicing democracy, underneath, we're still running this monarchical system in such a case where you have a senator representing the people in Abuja, and then there is this fund allocated to this senator to go and take care of his people, his community, the way he deems or he seems fit to do so. Because the reality of it is, at the end of the day, the closer the leadership is to the people, the more effective that leadership is going to be in solving the problem of the people. I think democracy makes the people to be so far away from us, from the leaders. So the leadership get close to the people only during the campaign period. After the campaign period, they get into their offices. 4 years later, they come back. You know, I think the leadership that will work effectively for our people, that is going to basically solve our people's problem in good time, will be a leadership that is close to the people and close to the ground.
It's interesting. So you've touched on most of those issues. The question about leadership or leader, the system now, which you just talked about, democracy or monarchical system. You've talked about the people, the followership, management, and the rest. You didn't answer the spiritual part. Is it a spiritual problem? And it takes me to my next question, because a lot of people turn to religion for a number of reasons. Some by conviction, and naturally. Some by condition. Some it's by convention. I mean, it's been done, so I just go there, just do it, like religion in that sense. Some for conventions, different reasons people go to religious centers. And what we've seen now is religion has become so sort of government on its own, if you know what I mean. If you were to pull together members of certain churches, you would almost have a state. You know, some you have local government, so they have that. They have those structures, and we've seen leaders, religious leaders, come under fire. Just recently, one of the biggest churches declared prayer and fasting, right? And some people came for the church saying Nigeria does not need prayer, Nigeria does not need fasting. You know, God has done what God will do. Why do we keep doing this? It doesn't work for Nigeria. So you've come under a lot of flack, and I say this with data to back it. So. My question then is, what is it fair, first of all, to have that kind of criticism come at you? Because some say you weren't voted, nobody voted for you. So is it fair to have that? Two, do you think it's really inevitable? Because what you find is some of these religious centers fraternizing with the same leaders that we say are not leaders in that sense. So you wonder, is this what God is about, really? So those two questions, and what more must our religious leaders do?
Well, to start with, I think that if there is a problem in a nation like it is in Nigeria, it's not one person's problem, it's everybody's problem. It's not one person that is going to resolve it, it's everyone that is going to try and bring solution to the table. So basically, until we are where we ought to be, even pastors like myself, every leader, every citizen ought to take responsibility, for where Nigeria is, and also take responsibility for where Nigeria is going. And yes, and people are free to voice out their opinion, what they feel, based on how much they know, what they think. So they're free to express themselves. So I wouldn't say that the church should have immunity from criticism, based on what is going on right now, and neither should pastors do. We're part of the community, we are part of the society, and we have to take some responsibility as well. However, no man can prevail based on his own strength. The church's role is to galvanize the people, to pray, to fast, to seek the face of the Lord. The responsibility of the church is to hear the Lord, hear the word of the Lord, and let the people know what the Lord says in the situation where we are, what we are supposed to be doing. That is the core responsibility of the pulpit in the society. And the church must be allowed to continue to do that, even though we are also part of the solution outside of the pulpit, because outside of the pulpit, we also function as counselors. We give counsel to those who are in power, just like any other expert within the society would do. And so Galatians chapter 2 verse 2 also encourages us not to leave our leaders alone, and let them be by themselves, even though they don't come to our churches, or even though they're not Christians. The scripture tells us that we should leave our pulpit and go find them. The same thing that we preach to those who are in our churches, we should privately, teach it to them. So so it is appropriate for pastors, for church leaders, to establish a relationship with those who are leading us in our country, and try to influence them with the word of God and what the Lord says.
So prayer and fasting, pardon me, because that's another important part as we wind up. Prayer and fasting. Some say it's an exercise in futility. Some say, what's the point of been doing this for years? It was a major, argument point. Does it work? Maybe you can give us a prickle.
Prayer and fasting works. Number one,
Nigeria.
Number one. If just imagine if Nigeria is a country that has no churches. Just imagine if Nigeria is a country that has no one praying for it, no one fasting, no one speaking the word of life and hope to people on a weekly basis. Just imagine what Nigeria will have become if, while we're praying this much, fasting this much, and all coming together, gathering in churches this way, and if the country is still like this, I think it's going to be something disastrous.
We're going to get to your book in a moment. Do you also think that, because you talked about priestly power protocol in Galatians 2 that you mentioned, do you also feel that there's also a failure on the part of the pulpit to hold the people in power to account, or they should just stay out of it? Which is what you mentioned as part of, if we're not praying, if we're not doing all of these things, and with all the things we do, we still have this problem. Should the pastors now go beyond just praying to really holding the people or the authorities to account?
I believe that the pastors, I believe that some pastors, I believe the pastors who have the means, who have the platforms, I believe that they are holding the leaders into account. I believe so. I believe that our pulpit comes. I heard my pastor on Boxing Day. He was talking about the leadership, and he definitely, held the government of the day to account. I believe that people, in their own ways, in their own styles, do talk about the shortfalls of the leaders in the way that they should, as much as possible. It has to be positive. It has to be something enough not to basically criticize them and still leave us where we are, but to make them to be influenced, to be able to change. And I think that a lot of this is going on. Maybe we need to do more, probably. Yes, maybe we need to look at that.
All right, so, we're introducing a new segment called the Morning Chapters, and you're up for it. You've written a couple of books. One of your books is Married But Single, right?
Married But Living Single.
But Living Single. Maybe, what inspires that phrase? I'm sure you, as you say, you're a counselor. I remember there was the report we got, I've forgotten the court now, in one of those courts in Lagos, that talks about within a very short time, about 3 months or 6 months, I can't remember the exact time, but less than a year, the number of divorces they recorded, over 30-something thousand people headed to court for a divorce. So is that what inspires this? And what is going on with marriages and why they are failing?
Actually, a lot of marriages is in rock and splitting. It's a different scenario from married but living single.
Okay.
This is a salient divorce that is not open, that is not formalized. So where you have the husband and the wife still living under the same roof, still married, but they're living as if they're single, because there is no companionship. They're basically living like housemates. There's no friendship. There is no loyalty. There is no commitment. They wish that they could split, but the society will not make them look good splitting. So maybe because their parents would say, oh, nobody divorces in our home, you're not going to be the first one to start. Or maybe they belong to a church where it is like divorce is a no-no. Once you get divorced, you are going to be ostracized from the congregation. So they rather keep their problems to themselves, probably go to even church wearing the same fabric attire, but then when they get home, they eat from different pots, they sleep in different beds, and they don't do anything in common. And that in itself defeats the purpose of marriage itself, because God says that it is not good for man to be alone. So I'm going to make him a helper who is going to be befitting for him. Companionship is needed in marriage. You need somebody to be there. You can't be married and be alone. So we see a lot of this around, and we wanted to expose that, so that people can not hide under that anymore and deal with the problems they have in their relationship and get healing.
Just one more thing, it's kind of ironic that something that was meant for good, something that just, meant for beauty, is now one of the biggest challenges people go through right now, and talking about love, marriage. So if there's someone listening to you out there who's going through this, who's like, you're describing my marriage, this is me, we don't want to just leave it there. There's a lot in that book, but if you had a line or two lines to say to that person or that couple right now that are listening to you and they're saying, this is me, so what can I do? It's been really tough. What would you tell them?
The first thing I want to say is that that is not how God has fashioned out marriage institution. Is supposed to be something that is supposed to help you. One would chase 1,000, two would put 10,000 to flight. So you are a better person working with your partner. Whatever it is that has brought division into your camp, whatever it is, that has made you to start to live this way is probably based on principles and based on personalities. I want you to reevaluate it. Is it really worth it? Are you getting the best out of your relationship? Instead of you staying separated, unhappy, lonely, why don't you seek counsel if you cannot do it by yourself? But if you have the courage to do it by yourself, why don't you sit your partner down and ask yourselves, how did we get to where we are? Because you first loved yourself at some point. You know, you were crazy over each other at some point. So why don't you just try and work your way back if possible? If you need help, seek one. But it's better that you come back to where you started from.
So what are some of the things you've identified are triggers? Because the breakup, internal or the lack of harmony did not just occur. These people were quote unquote crazy in love with each other one day, but they were not observant perhaps to the changes that were occurring until boom, it boomerang. What are the things you can tell people to look out for not to get to that point where they'll be married but living single?
Well, the first thing, I think we live in a world right now where everybody claims that they have the right to their opinions, you know, and they want to stick to their opinions. I want everybody to understand that marriage is not a place, you know, where you stick to your opinion. Marriage is a place, it's not a me place, it's an us place. Divorce or division doesn't start when you separate. Division actually starts when you begin to have two visions within the relationship. One person wants to go to the east, the other person wants to go to the west. This can be in terms of finances, this can be in terms of how you raise your kids, this can be in how you live your lives on a daily basis. If you can't come together, you know, and align your vision to be one, it's going to be a problem. It's going to be a problem.
Amazing. I'm glad you've spotlighted that issue, and you find more in your book, Married But Living Single. The point is there's hope. There's a lot more that can be done to ensure that that marriage is what it ought to be. We have to thank you so much. It's funny how we're able to talk about governance, politics, and then dovetail into marriage. We'll be speaking with Pastor Femi Fashiru. You see him a lot on television, so I'm sure this is nothing new. He is the National Superintendent of Kingsway International Christian Center, Nigeria, and resident pastor KICC, Maryland. Thank you, Pastor Fashiru, for your time.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
We'll take a moment now, quite a lot to chew on from that conversation, really, but we'll take a breather. And when we return, we'll bring you yet another face that you're familiar with on television, both online. She's done great in the fashion industry, and now she's in this reality TV series. Yes, we'll be sitting with her in a moment. Stay with us right here. It's the Morning Brief.
Let's now tell you what you have been talking about on our social media of choice, X. And of course, we will be running through all of this in just a moment. But hey, what are the things you've been saying? The weekend was packed with loads of things. Our job is to curate it and bring you up to speed, as well as amplify your voices. So let's talk about the very first one. I remember something occurred where we understand the sons of a billionaire businessman, Mr. Okoya, who celebrated his birthday, where that's the video, yes. Those are the sons of Razak Okoya holding bundles of Nigerian currency. And you can see the policeman there in front of them holding just the cash, maybe collecting from the policeman to spray. Yeah, it's spraying. Yes, I can see them spraying. So something happened. Let me just explain what happened. So the police has actually detained the officer for perhaps allowing what happened to happen, for disciplinary action and all of that. But people were wondering, if you arrest the officer and detain the officer, what happened to the perpetrators of the crime? Or as we say in law, the alleged crime? Well, we understand they've been summoned. And this has generated a lot of things as to selective justice and all of that. Why go after the policeman, not the sons of the billionaires, a billionaire and all of that. So, but we understand the police has now summoned Subomi and Wahab Okoya, sons of billionaire industrialist Razak Okoya, over alleged naira abuse. Remember, this same thing is what took Bobrisky, the socialite, to prison for 6 months. Okay, so these are the things you're saying. Eddie Chuk says, let's see how this will end, considering the credibility of the EFCC, especially when they watch stealing staff as their operatives.
Is this better?
Okay, this person said, your name is Young Blessed Money. He said, history shows us that even dynasties fall when they neglect accountability. Wealth and influence must be balanced with moral responsibility. Mazi Nziako says, someone not arrested? Yeah, people are also raising concerns. Why are you summoning them? Why are you not arresting them? Just like you detain the police officers. So is there law for the rich and another one for the poor? Well, they will be going there in convoy of police details. Poor man, do something, they arrest them. Rich man, do something, then someone else. Interesting perspective. And the last one, Oche Emmanuel Inalugwe says, if you watch the video, you realize they didn't abuse any naira. They were literally dancing with a wad of cash still intact in their packs. It wasn't like they were spraying the money or stepping on it. I didn't see any abuse of that. Well, we saw the spray in just a moment. So those are the things you'll be talking about as far as that cash is concerned. So let's see what will happen after investigation. We are watching what the police will do to the lady or gentleman, I'm not sure who, the police officer, also watching how the summoning or the arrest, if you will, of the sons of the billionaires will turn out, so that we really know whether the law is balanced for all of us. Okay. Woman escapes attack by Ibom Air passengers after causing flight cancellation after unruly behavior. We understand there was a cancellation of a flight because of an unruly behavior of a woman. I think she was removed from the aircraft. You can see her on boarding. The boarding, rather, I should say, that particular flight, being escorted out by staff of the airport or the airline, I guess. So these are the things you've been saying in terms of reaction. 3J Dimension says this lady needs to be interviewed live, I guess. Questions should be asked. This will correct the situation for anyone trying to do this in future. I sincere probably question need. Okay, I'm not sure what you're trying to say, but I guess you wanted her to be questioned as to why she behaved the way she did. Johnny Doe says, why didn't the airline bundle her out of the aircraft? I still blame Ibom Air. How can one passenger hold 89 passengers to ransom? Person way una eject from the aircraft immediately. It was obvious the flight was at risk of being cancelled. Okay. Let's move to the next one. A viral video of a woman and Nigerian police officer fighting. We've seen this time and again, and this is quite an embarrassing situation, but we don't know the full story, but the situation is that they were fighting. This is what you say, Lizzie of Barcelona. Interesting. So you can see maybe snapshots of that fracas between the police and the woman. But we can't take, because of viewer discretion, we can't take violence. It may be messy for some of our viewers. This one said, I was there when it happened. The policeman collected the woman's car keys and asked her to pay 5,000 because she couldn't present her driver's license. She said the car was for her son, that he has just returned back to the UK. Police can't call her a shower. Oh boy. Now, that is not a good thing to say to any woman, but it's derogatory for any woman to be called that. So, unfortunately, that was called, and that is not acceptable even for television. So I apologize for that. Okay, Big Bass says she beat policewoman to the ground. What happened to gallantry? Often Chris says, whatever is the case, exuberance is nothing where legality is concerned. Unless she is well connected, she would sit in prison a little while. Okay, so those are some of the things you've been saying on social media as far as this is concerned. And it's important that we are careful what we say to people that can really escalate. The way people are referred to people in derogatory terms is not really acceptable as far as society is concerned. You don't just call anybody any name you feel like, because you could be a subject of litigation and you could be called for it. All right, we'll take a quick break now. When we come back, we're going to that conversation. We have two guests joining us on the program. One is a businesswoman entrepreneur, has a background in finance, but now she's on a reality TV show. So in just a moment, we're talking to her. Join us again.
So there you have it. Dabota Lawson joins us on the show. Quite a CV she has on her. Multifaceted entrepreneur, award-winning beauty mogul, philanthropist, published author. I could go on, but we really need to have this conversation. Good morning and welcome to the Morning Brief.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
I had to say it. Looking at your CV, it's quite impressive. Foundation in Professional Management Accounting from the London School of Business and Finance, bachelor's degree in Financial Economics, University of Leicester. For a lot of people, they just know you on social media, right? They know about your fashion strides and all. But how is your background in academics, in business and all of that? How is it a major factor in the success you have recorded now on social media? It's like people don't see that part, but how much of that is a part of this that we see now?
To be honest, for any person to succeed, whether you're on social media or you're in a corporate environment, you have to have structure. And what my educational background has allowed me to exhibit is structure. So I may not necessarily, be crying out loud every day saying I have a degree in finance, I'm a management accountant and all of that, but you can see evidently that there is structure. There's something that my dad used to say. He used to say, when someone doesn't go to school, in some ways, in fact, in many ways, it shows, and you will see it in their structure. There's sometimes that even when people who are not educated make money, you would still experience certain limitations. So when you look at my social media page, you can see that there's structure. There's structure even up until how I dress. So when it comes to the way I dress according to my brand colors, my brand palettes, which are black, white, gray. So if I had 10 pictures, you would see that 8 pictures, I'm wearing those colors. And you can only have such knowledge about branding as an individual when you have a level of exposure and education and knowledge to that fact. So yes, whilst it might look like fashion, my educational background, my corporate experience allows me to have better structure, and it has allowed me to maintain my audience. It has allowed me to communicate effectively what I wish to communicate as an individual, or on behalf of my brand, or on behalf of the brands that I've worked with or institutions that I've partnered with.
So after all, school is not a scam, and it's evident from that point you have made. But more importantly is how you're able to use the things you've learned in school in real life, translate it to real life. And it's great to see your strides. I must say, we'll come to your work in reality TV show, but I want to get this out of the way. A lot of people see you, and some of them, they see inspiration. A lot of young girls see you and see inspiration. Some see you and they see tension. Once they see your post, they're like, oh no, just another reminder that I'm not achieving much in life. And I want you to speak to that, because there's a tendency to have social media tension people. And I'm sure you know what I mean, right? Some would even say social media can give them depression, because they see people, they keep scrolling and they're like, am I the only one going through tough times in life? So to those people that see you and see tension, or people like you and they see tension, what would you like to tell them about you? Because you said, you probably go through stuff yourself.
Yes. So first of all, for the younger generation that may feel tensioned, let me just remind you that I'm not your age mate.
Say that again. That sounds like tension again.
I'm not your age mate. And when I say I'm not your age mate, what I mean is I have gone through life, and when I was a lot younger, I wasn't in this place that I am today. Where I was last year is not where I am today. So life is all about growth, development, self-development, and progress. So when young people say, "Oh, I want to be like you," I constantly remind them that being like me takes years, takes time, takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of self-discipline, commitment, and the ability to overcome. So there's no reason why you should see people online and be tensioned. Sometimes, we post pictures not everything is in real time. So I may have taken a picture last week and we have a plan for the photo for next week. I might literally be crying, upset, sick, going through something in that moment, but that post has been scheduled to go out at a particular time on a particular day. And when that happens, if you're busy being tensioned in that moment by my photos, it will be totally ridiculous, because in reality, I'm not even in the best frame of mind. Nobody really goes online, or hardly do you hear people go online showcasing, sad, tough, difficult moments in their life. We like to express happiness, joy, peace, love, enjoyment, lifestyle, luxury. So I don't think, and I'll never advise anybody to be tensioned. In fact, for me, there was a time where I used to look at couple photos, and I used to think, these people love themselves so much. This was when I was a lot younger. I want to be like this. I want to have a marriage like this. I used to admire so many, especially Hollywood stars, because they have the glitz, the glam, and then they have the fairy tale outlook of what marriage relationship should look like. But over the years, as I was getting older, I started to realize, okay, not every time I see a perfect picture, I should be translating it into a perfect life. So with time and experience, I always say people eventually get to that point where you're no longer tensioned by what you see online. You then begin to realize that life really happens. 1 minute you're happy, excited, and the next minute, everything can change. And I'll give you a typical example. On the 26th of December, this is a very sad situation. I was at a friend's Boxing Day party. I was posting, I was enjoying myself. And just close to midnight, I got a call, and it was a call to say a family member had passed away. I immediately left that party. There was no other post after that. But people somewhere would be thinking, she's having such a great time on Boxing Day with her friends. They're drinking, they're enjoying themselves, they look fashionable. But, in that moment, I had just experienced a really tragic situation. So never ever just look at people and think, oh, let me be tensioned. And for a lot of us that work as business people, some things too are curated for those purposes, to make you, to attract you, to lure you, to bring more clients, it's not everything that is real. Some of these things are projected activities for adverts, for PR, for so many different reasons. So you should never really be tensioned by what you see online.
This will do. When you say you're not their mate, some would say, come on, you're not 50, you're not even, maybe you can clear the air of your age. Some say, well, are you 36? Really? So when you say the other age, people say, well, I'm even older than she is, so maybe I should be
I'm speaking to the younger generation, because with everything I've experienced in life, I don't really expect people my age or older to be tensioned by anything they see online, because me,
Right.
I've seen so much. I've
Understandable.
experienced so much that you can never tension me. I don't care what you put out there. You can never, if I wasn't there to see and I don't really know you, you can never tension me. I can admire, I can just, look and pass.
Yeah,
but
certainly.
I
Just
won't be
just to put that out there. But you've gone through your fair share of challenges in life, personally, your relationship as well, and some still see you and wonder how did you go through all of that? How did you take all of the I don't know, call it bad energy, all of those down times. Maybe some still see you and that's what they remember. I don't know if you still stay there. But how do you take all of that negative energy, all of the down times to become this? Because for some, they'll say if you go through those kind of things you went through, it's a major deal breaker in life, and some don't even recover anyway. But here you are, talking to us.
Well, I think I learned how to face challenges head on from my parents. So growing up, my dad held a very huge position in River State, and there was a time where it felt like we were living our best life. And at some point, he was removed from his position, and a lot of things changed in our lives. And again, at some point again, he was reinstated even to a higher position. My dad used to be the MD of NAFCON. NAFCON was the National Fertilizing Company of Nigeria. So we saw how life can go this way. 1 minute you're up there, 1 minute you're down there. It was a really, really tough time for my family. And I think for every time I go through a tough time, I remember my childhood. I remember how my parents pulled through. I remember how they put it together, how they still made sure that they were able to give us the best in terms of our education, in terms of our lifestyle, the standard of living that we had. So I know as a parent now, before I even had kids, I had been parenting other kids. So I know that when it comes to life challenges, you can't let life beat you down. Bad things happen. Bad things will happen. I'm a Christian as well. So I understand when the word says, even when you go through the fire, I will be with you. It's a guarantee that bad things will happen. And even bad things happen to unsuspecting good people.
All right.
There are just some things that you can't avoid. And once you understand that it is a part of life, you would learn also to know that there is no promise of forever with bad times. There's always a light at the end of the tunnel. And all you need to do is just fight to get through to that light. Fight for yourself. Remember the good times. Every day is not a bad day. You have good days, you have bad days. You have to be able to control your mind. Not just control your mind, but condition your mind to understand that if you're having a bad day today, it's not a bad life. So that's how I've been able to overcome a lot of things. Sometimes in my worst situation, I look back at times where I felt, okay, this was the worst thing that could happen to me, and I overcame them. And it just reminds me that even in this situation, I can still overcome. And I try my best to mentally pull myself out of that dark place so that I can move forward.
All right, Dabota, it's a great point you've made, and amazing story you have. I know you say you don't want to tension people, but you're already tensioning them with the Real Housewives of Lagos. You look like you don't like controversy. But getting into that, what made you to accept being a part of the cast of Real Housewives of Lagos? Because it can be a very, very, very intense and controversial space.
For me, in my world where I exist, I call the shots. I make the final decisions. I am the boss at home, at work. And I wanted to see how well I can thrive outside of my comfort zone. When it comes to my friends, I have a very close-knit circle. My friends today are probably people I've known 20, 10 years, maybe a few people I've recently met and created a relationship with. So going on this show for me was a way it was sort of like a social experiment for me to get out of my comfort zone, to interact with people who are also somewhat like-minded, strong personalities, women who are not afraid to put themselves out there. It was also a business strategy for me, because it's one thing to have a lot of followers on social media, communicate, have that fashion sense and whatever, but it's another thing to relate and connect with people. And I realized that in this day and age, people want to connect with you on a personal level because they want to experience you. So for me, this was a way to put my business out there, have a new set of people engage my brand, and also see how well I can thrive outside of my comfort zone.
So how are you managing the controversy? As I'm sure you've had some experience on the set already. What have you experienced so far? Has there been any controversy? How are you navigating that part? I know you say you're the queen of queens. We're going to talk to that about a moment. But just respond to controversies, by the way.
There hasn't been anything controversial because nothing outside the ordinary has happened. The show has only just aired yesterday on DSTV. I don't really know what to expect. I only know what I did. I'm not always there to experience what everybody else did, but so far so good. Nothing out of the ordinary has happened. So everything has gone well. It was an amazing experience that I will never forget. Yeah.
So do you have like some of the persons, most of you on the set have strong personalities. Do you flow with everyone, or there are certain people you feel that you are gravitating towards based on perhaps similarities or opposites?
As with every group of people working together, there are times where you're getting along, and there are times where you're not on the same page. But all in all, I think I was able to connect with all the women at different points in time. And even when, there may be certain levels of disagreement in terms of our point of views or perspectives, we were really matured enough to handle ourselves. Most of the women there, if not all the women there, are business women in this season, hardworking women who have also an image to maintain, who also are there to promote their brands. Everybody on the set is a mom. We're all parents, so it's a totally different vibe from what you're used to with regular reality TV's show.
Interesting. So clearly, lots to watch out for. But some have a grouse against reality shows such as yours. They always ask, what is the point of it? What do I gain from this reality show, right? Is this a good way to spend my time? Right. I wonder what you say to those people on the one hand. On the other hand, I saw you had posted there's no peace for single people, the single Pringle. So I wonder for you, which is it something you're working towards? Is that something you want to give a try yet again? Because you said it. So do you want to finally have that, in quotes, peace as a non-single person? Because it looks like the married keep tensioning those who are not. So, two questions in one.
Single people have suffered online 2024. I pray we don't suffer that much in 2025. Yes, I hope that in due time I will, no longer be single. But right now, I don't think it's a crime to also be single and, live your life. as long as you're living right, you're achieving your goals, it's fine. But that would not be a permanent situation for me, I can assure you that.
No condition is permanent.
So it's tension. So as you're tensioning us on one hand, other people are tensioning. It's a convolution of tension.
Very interesting. We look forward to what the year holds and what the show holds as well. And it's great to see women taking the lead wherever and everywhere. But we have to thank you so much.
The reality TV show will thrive with women better than men, of course.
You think so?
Yeah.
People always say, oh, should I spend my time watching reality TV shows? Oh, I don't like this. But the numbers don't lie. They all watch it.
So they are watching it, right?
Yes, there's a part of them that enjoy it.
Come on, can you see? There you go. So you've been exposed this morning. But we have to thank you so much. I'm speaking with Dabota Lawson, multifaceted entrepreneur, award-winning beauty mogul, philanthropist, and our reality TV show star. We hope you won't throw punches eventually, but we'll wait to see how that plays out. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
So there you go. Jeffrey, it would be good to have a reality TV show for men.
Yeah, I know there was one Ebuka did with the guys. I don't know how well that did.
A lot of men.
Yeah, a lot of men. I don't know how much drama men can bring like women, I'm not saying a bad thing. I'm saying drama.
So
men, we reconcile too quickly. Women can hold it for like an election like 4 years till Tinubu runs or refuses to run, Guys, we just quarrel now. Guy, forget that thing.
Just move on, right?
We just move on. The next hour we're rolling, but women, they'll analyze it. Sorry, no disrespect to women.
You say we're bad for TV as men.
For reality TV, I think it's better. Women will give us better content. So it's just a joke, but I'm just thinking women will do better reality TV than you guys know how to hold this thing. Hold it,
Jeffrey,
as long as it can last.
You fold. In the street of Lingo, you fold. We have to thank you so much. What a show it has been today. But we're back tomorrow. The full crew. Bukola will be here to respond to some of Jeffrey's comments. I'm Kayode Okikele.
I'm Jeffrey Ozaman. Bye-bye.